Hello, friends, and welcome back to Weird Wednesdays. Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight I've got 4 of the strangest encounters with unknown beings, creatures, and cryptids that I've read in a while. So grab your gear, keep your eyes peeled, and let's ride into the unexplained. Number 1. Dear Tattooed Biker, I have a weird one I'd like to share. This happened about 25 years ago, but I still think about it on a regular basis. At the time, my 2 boys were around 6 and 8 years old, and happened in a small town about 20 miles from Skinwalker Ranch in the Unitah Basin in Utah. Having grown up there, I had more than a few personal experiences that still give me chills, but this event was beyond anything I've experienced before or even heard about. My 2 boys slept in a bunk bed in a room just across the hall from my room. I was fast asleep when I was suddenly awakened by the most intense and terrifying screams from my boys, screaming and crying out for me. I jumped out of my bed, grabbed my pistol from the top dresser drawer, and threw open my door. How do I say this? There in front of me, running out of my son's bedroom, was a 2 to 3 foot, bright green creature. I have no idea what it was, but it looked at me as it exited their room and shot down the hallway, making a quick turn before shooting down my basement stairs. Keep in mind, all the lights were off, but this thing stood out. Bright green in color with black patches on its face and body. I only got a quick look at it, but what my kids would tell me terrified me to the core. I ran into their room and flipped on the light. There they were, both of them, standing in the middle of the room holding their pillows. They were crying and screaming so hard that I couldn't really understand what they were saying. My wife came in and began to calm them down while I went looking for whatever just ran down into my basement. I searched everywhere, every corner, but found nothing. I went back upstairs and asked my boys what happened. Without going into great detail here, what they told me was absolutely horrifying. My youngest son told me he woke up and noticed something green, hunched over, standing in the doorway, just looking at him. He wasn't sure what it was, so he sat up, and when he did, this thing started grinning at him with big teeth, causing him to let out a scream, waking up my older son. While my younger son was telling me what he had seen, my older son spoke up and said it looked like Darth Maul, but green. If this sounds familiar, Darth Maul is a Star Wars character. Look him up and you'll get an idea as to what this thing looked like. Imagine a short, hunched over Darth Maul. Now I guess out of fear, my youngest son grabbed his pillow and started hitting this thing, which had now moved into the room closer to them. He then tells me it grabbed hold of his pillow and started growling at him. This caused my older son to start screaming as well, and within seconds, he joined in with his pillow, hitting it over and over until it suddenly let go of the pillow, turned, and backed toward the door. I think it must have heard me open my door because this is about when I saw it. Like I said, I didn't get the best look at it, but it was bright green with black patches, and it moved extremely fast. This event had a profound impact on my youngest son. From that point forward, he would only sleep with his head covered, which always worried me. I had to sleep in their room for the next week or 2 before they would go to sleep without me, and only then with a lamp on. Sound hard to believe? I get it. Had I not seen it for myself, I would have thought they were imagining things. Seeing is absolutely believing. Was it a demon, a ghost, an alien, or something else entirely? I don't have a clue, but I know that it wasn't human, and we never saw it again. Even today, they still draw pictures of what they saw. And while they don't like to talk about it with me, their descriptions have never changed. I had an experience with something very similar when I was about 8 years old, and I sometimes wonder if it was the same thing. What I can tell you is that this is a real, 100% true event, and the first time I've shared it with anyone outside my family. I don't expect anyone to believe it, but I'm telling you, it's all true. Thanks. Signed, Charlie. Number 2. Hey TB, I wanted to share something that happened to me. In 2015, I was driving back from an ex-partner's house at about 11 p.m. in rural Lancashire in the north of England. It was late November from what I can remember, so it was a clear night with a big bright moon and very cold out, for England at least. To get to my home, you have to cut off the motorway and take a slightly rural route up a wooded road. It's not a large or dense wood. You could probably walk from one end to the other in 15 to 20 minutes. It's roughly a 5-minute drive through the trees. As I was driving along, the road twisted and turned, as it always had the hundreds of other times I'd used it. So I had to drive very slowly, about 20 kilometers per hour, in case a car came around a bend too fast. There's always accidents there. And so I was raising and dipping my headlights in full beam, as you do. As I turned a corner, about 30 feet in front of my car, was a large, scrawny, gray figure. At first, I thought it was a large branch that had fallen from the tree, so I crept towards it and put on my full beam. When I got within about 10 feet of it, the creature, or whatever it was, moved as though it was doing a press-up, pushing itself up with its arms, and my headlights caught its eyes, which glowed like a cat's do when you shine a light at them at night. I stopped the car, half expecting it to just be a deer and run out of the way, but the creature didn't move. It just stayed stationary, staring right at me, giving me a good 10 to 15 seconds to look at it. Then it slowly stood up on 2 legs, still looking at me in the car. It was big. The top of my car only reached the lower ribcage region, so I'd estimate it was probably 9 to 10 feet tall. It was pale gray, hairless and gaunt. I could see its ribcage and spine, and it had long bony arms, probably each over a meter long, and large claw-like hands. The closest comparison I could give you is the gray bony werewolf in the 3rd Harry Potter movie. Once I had taken all this in and realized the situation, I began to panic, putting my car in reverse, but the creature then just turned and walked calmly, silently, off into the woods next to the road. It didn't run. It didn't seem, at the least, scared or intimidated. It almost seemed disinterested or bored. I didn't hang out to investigate the area. I went straight home and locked the door. I spoke to all my friends, and all but one of them thought I was joking, but she seemed to take it very, very seriously, having had a similar experience in a similar area a few years ago. She said it was a bad omen, and after doing some research, I can understand why. As I said, I don't really believe in anything, and I've never seen anything before. I travel that road at least once or twice a week, and I've never seen anything since. Does anyone have any idea what it could have been? We don't have large animals over here in the UK. The biggest we get in my area are badgers and small and medium-sized deer. Certainly not that size. And surely a deer would startle in the headlights and run, don't you think? Anyway, thanks for reading this. Signed, Liam. Number 3. Hey TB, I live in North Carolina, Durham specifically. My family lives in a standard 2-story house in the middle of a run-of-the-mill neighborhood. Lots of intersecting roads, etc. On the night in question, my family was going to visit a relative who had given birth recently in Greensboro, so I had the house to myself. I was getting home at around 8 to 9 p.m. and decided to bring my dog in. She stays outside in a kennel for the day, so we bring her in for the night. Our house has a large garage attached to the left of it, and the garage has a back door that leads out into the backyard. Her kennel is just to your right as you exit the door, with a 4 to 5 feet clearance path between it and the garage. There's also a bed of rock just up against the house, which will be important later on. She had recently been taken to the vet for her distressed behavior, which is why I had to stay home to be with her. The evening went fine. I watched a movie to pass the time. I then took her out to use the bathroom before being put up for the night, around 12 to 1 a.m. I took her out the back garage door with her long leash. I was wearing socks and didn't feel like getting them soaked. She usually does her business in that little clearing between the kennel and the garage, so I let her walk through it. Our garage has a single light on the back wall. Not LED or anything, so not really bright. So I could see her somewhat while she does it. She's facing me when suddenly her backside lifts up 1 or 2 feet into the air. I assume some wild dog or something had tried to drag her. She runs back to me and I hear rustling among the rocks, and this figure stops right as it enters visible view in the light. I've never seen anything like this in my life. It was tall. I'm 6'2", and I had to look slightly up to see where I thought the head would be. It was pale, but not white or gray. Just a normal pale flesh color, like someone who spends a week or two indoors. It was lanky, not really anorexic or anything, but definitely disproportionate. It looked at me for a good 1 to 2 seconds before it backtracked in the quickest manner I could ever replicate. As soon as it went, I booked it back inside. I was torn about calling the police if my neighbors who had heard my scream hadn't. Behold, almost half an hour later, the police arrive in my driveway. I told them I'd seen a man in the backyard, leaving out the whole tall demon crap going on. I've been contemplating whether it was some creature or some NBA-bound nude meth head. Once again, I don't count myself as a believer in Bigfoot or Mothman, but I really don't know what happened. I'm most definitely not taking the dog out alone again anytime soon. I just want to know, what was that thing? Why was it in a suburban neighborhood? Should I bother telling my family when they get back? I just have so many questions. Thanks. Signed, Roger. Number 4. Dear TB, in 1999, I was working at Caledonia State Park in south central Pennsylvania and got to know the back areas of it pretty well. The areas most tourists don't get to see. Approximately 1 mile from the park, on a long, all-dirt road, was a large clearing in the woods, which was cleared for power lines and gas well use. Once you got to that spot, you would have to walk down a long hill until you came to an old, abandoned trail. If you followed this trail, it would take you deep into the forest. One day I followed it and found that it led to an old, dilapidated cabin, not a park cabin records, and it looked like it hadn't been used for many decades. Even though it was daylight, I still got this creepy feeling, like I shouldn't be there, and worse, that something was watching every move that I made. A few weeks later, while I was off duty, 2 of my friends and I were just out driving around, enjoying the summer night. And since I knew all the back roads, I was taking them on kind of a tour. Note that none of these roads are off limits or secret, so I wasn't breaking any laws or rules. Other than that mysterious cabin, the park hasn't had any secrets. About 11 p.m., I came to that familiar clearing, and I mentioned something about the old cabin. Being a brave soul, I talked them into letting me show them the cabin. So I grabbed my flashlight and we took off down the hill and onto the path that led to the cabin. I took the lead and we walked halfway when, all of a sudden, my light flashed on something on the right side of the path. Almost immediately, I stopped and said, "Did you just see that?" To which they responded, "See what?" As I panned the light back to the right side of the road, I said, "That." There, standing by the tree, was a creature only seen in sci-fi movies. It had a grayish olive-colored skin and was very thin in its extremities. The calves and forearm muscles were very large, as well as the chest. The face was the strangest thing, since it had the typical alien gray head shape, but there was no mouth. It had a nose that was long and thin, but not longer than its chin. The eyes had a reddish gleam in the light, but not the size of most reported aliens. They were even small by human standards. I hate to make this reference for fear of questioning my sanity, but my best description was that it looked like the Goons in the Popeye cartoon. It leans oddly against a tree, as if you were leaning on an armchair with only one arm. To make another TV show reference, but like the Fonz would lean on the jukebox in Happy Days, minus the legs being crossed. Immediately everyone wanted to leave, but as we turned, my flashlight suddenly went out. My friends told me to quit messing with them and turn the light back on, to which I informed them that I wasn't messing with them and to keep moving, now that I was back at the group. I frantically continued to beat on my flashlight, trying to get it to work again. As soon as it came back on, I immediately swiveled back around to shine it behind us. The creature had moved up significantly and now was on the left side. We hurried to the clearing, and once we got back up the hill to the main dirt road, things got even worse. Out of the woods we had just come through was this high-pitched, blood-curdling screeching noise, which, after it started, others started to answer back from the other side of the clearing. I had been in the woods all my life and had my degree from Penn State in wildlife management, meaning I've heard a lot of noises in the wild, but I've never heard that sound before. I know it wasn't any kind of owl or bobcat or bear, bird or porcupine. You get the drift. Months went by after, without incident, other than not being able to shake that I'm being watched feeling. I was to the point of feeling like I was being stalked. One night, I went to get something from my truck, and when I looked into the woods, I saw those reddish glowing eyes staring back at me from the shadows. I immediately ran into my house and grabbed my biggest knife. I'm not a gun guy. To which my dad asked me what I was doing. I told him I was tired of feeling stalked and I was going to face this thing. He told me he was coming with me, but all along I knew he never truly believed me or my encounter. When we got outside, he nonchalantly asked, "Okay, so where did you see this thing?" And I pointed to the spot, to which he directed his flashlight. Much to his disbelief, there it was, and as soon as the light hit it, it tore off deep into the woods. My dad, an ex-Marine, who served proudly during Vietnam, yelled at me to get back into the house with fear, actual fear in his voice. To this day, it still creeps me out, telling about this encounter, and my hands shake, even while I'm typing and recalling it all. I'm now in my 30s with a wife and kids, and we live not far from the state park, but even now when I go outside at night, I still feel watched, to the point that I get a really strong feeling my wife won't let me leave the house without her. Just as a side note, for the first 5 years of our relationship, she would too catch sight of this creature, but mostly as it was going into the shadows. As a further note, if anyone is questioning it, there were no drugs or alcohol or any other substance involved during this or any other encounter I've had. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Brad. And there you have it. 4 true encounters with strange beings and unidentified cryptids sent in by you wonderful viewers. If you've ever seen something that you just can't explain or had a brush with the unknown and want to tell your story, send it to me at the email in the description, and it might just make it into a future video. So thanks for watching, and remember, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe. I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.